Hello and welcome to our program, Where God Weeps, a program where we speak about the situation of the suffering and persecuted church around the world. The island province of Mindanao in the Philippines is, sadly, again in the news, following an attack against Christians perpetrated by Abu Saayef, an Islamic fundamentalist group allied with ISIS. A lone voice calling for peace and reconciliation between Muslims and Christians is that of Father Sebastino D'Ambra, a PIME priest who is 75 years old, 51 years a priest, and has been working for more than 40 years as a missionary on this island. To tell us more about his work, it's my great privilege to welcome Father Sebastino D'Ambra to our program. Father Sebastino, thank you for being with us here today in this wonderful location of the University of Santo Tomas in Manila in the Philippines. Father Sebastino, before we start our conversation, let's watch now a short video on your work on the island of Mindanao.
After joining the Pontifical Institute for Foreign Missions, Father Sebastino learned there were many negative perceptions of people from opposing religions which needed mending. He was assigned to the Philippines island of Mindanao, home to a large Muslim population, arriving there in February 1977.
In my first mission, was Yocon, Zamboanga del Norte, in Mindanao. I start to give attention, first of all, to the Subanon. These are indigenous people. All the neighbors were Muslim, and children are always around with a lot of curiosity. And one day, I was in the room, just for moments of prayer. When I went out, one little girl said, "Father, what you have done inside?" And I said, "I was praying." And this girl is looking at me and say, "Father, also the Christian pray?" I was touched because poor girl, she has an understanding of the Christian, like the military, those who kill the Muslim. The immersion in the Muslim community was, first of all, a kind of personal transformation. I came up with this expression that became now a slogan, our motto, our point of reference. Dialogue starts from God and brings people back to God.
Thanks to the respect garnered from the Muslim community, Father Sebastino was asked by the MNLF rebels to negotiate their surrender, for which the government would grant the rebels amnesty. This was a time of heavy military operations in different parts of Mindanao, resulting in major casualties from both the civilian and the armed groups. For more than a year, starting in August of 1979, Father Sebastino met with rebel and military groups.
I said to myself, I have to do this. It was a time of crisis. I have to help people here, Muslim, Christian, to build trust, peace, confidence.
In 1981, Father Sebastino's role as negotiator came to an abrupt end. An attempt was made on his life by the military. Afraid for his safety, the PIME mission superiors asked Father Sebastino return to Italy. From 1981 to 1983, he deepened his knowledge of Islam at the Pontifical Institute for Arabic and Islamic Studies in Rome. Those years would prove providential to his future mission in the Philippines.
For me, it was a kind of discovering, because although I had a certain understanding of Islam, but not so much, I discovered that in Islam there are also these people who are considered the spiritual, the mystics, who have a deeper faith And they talk about silsila means literally chain or link to their master, and the master link to God. I said, if each one of us are linked, we belong to the same family.
In this concept of silsila, Father Sebastiano found the spiritual foundation for interreligious dialogue. Upon his return to Zamboanga in 1983, he brought Muslim and Christian friends together in the spirit of one family. He wanted people of different religions to unite and experience together the love of God for all humanity.
In that meeting, I was surprised. There were Muslims and Christians together. And then he presented his idea of forming Muslims and Christians together and to call it silsila. People who will be together in promoting dialogue is the way to peace.
I found it very convincing, our being together with Father D'Ambra, because his mission and vision is like with us also. We are also advocating peace to the community in an Islamic way, but we are working together on how to create bridge toward relationship so that we can have harmonious living together with one another.
Today, the Silsila dialogue movement has expanded considerably since its formative years. The movement reaches beyond Zamboanga with programs extending nationally and internationally. Silsila is headquartered in Harmony Village, a lush 14-acre compound overlooking the Sulu Sea near Zamboanga. The grounds encompass many ever-expanding buildings and prayer houses. Harmony Village hosts numerous annual activities, including summer youth courses where Muslims and Christians interact, formation of faith groups and leaders, media production and publication, and many others.
Silsila is a movement, and we have different components. Structure-wise, we have an organizational setup. We also have areas of formation. We organize summer courses, seminars, and workshops. And these are participated by people who belong to different professions in life, and most especially those who are working in the communities and non-government organizations. We have also the Harmony Zone areas where we bring the spirit of dialogue and peace in the grassroots level.
Father Sebastino D'Ambra, he wants that how Christian to become a better Christian and how Muslim to become a better Muslim. One verse from the Bible that I've learned that he put into action is, blessed are the peacemaker. I think he is blessed because of being peacemaker, because right after the establishment of the movement, the Silsila Dialogue movement, you know, you can see harmonious and solidarity among Muslim and non-Muslims. We are trying to promote deeper understanding and how to build a good relationship and friendship from the people of Zamboanga.
Some people probably continue to say why you are spending so much time, energy with the Muslim. I think people start to reflect. It is worth it to build these bridges. I believe in this stage of history where there is more radicalism, we have to move on, no matter how. And I believe Christian and Muslim who have been observing Silsila in these 30 years, they can say it is worth it to be together, to build together a common house in spite of form of radicalism that still are clear, even here in our part, not only in other countries. Sa future sa apo mo.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to our program Where God Weeps. We're speaking here with Father Sebastino D'Ambra, a PIME missionary working on the island of Mindanao towards reconciliation between Christians and Muslims. Father Sebastino, thank you for being with us here again on our program. Mindanao has been known for about 40 years almost as a theater of war between the Philippine army and respective Muslim, Islamic fundamentalist insurgent groups. Can you give us a little bit of a picture about what's been going on this island for over 40 years now?
Yes, of course. So to put in the context, we have to remember that Islam arrived in the Philippines, in this part of the world that the Spanish call Philippines, arrived 8th century ago. Meanwhile, the Spaniards arrived 5 centuries ago. So for 3 centuries, Islam was in the south of the Philippines, of this archipelago, and make a strong root. It was a sultanate, Islamization, etc. So when the Spaniards arrived, they felt a little bit uneasy, of course. So, and in some way, the Spaniards and Christianization stopped the so-called Islamization in this part of the world, but that is part of the history. If we go to a more recent time, because through different stages, the relationship before was quite okay, because it was an Islam, the so-called traditional Islam, that didn't create so much contrast. Of course, the difference were there. But you mentioned about the 40 years. What happened? We know that around the world, starting the movement, maybe Nasser in Egypt, this new movement of revival, other leaders. Some Filipino who went to study in Egypt, Al-Qaeda, in Al-Azhar University, they start to get the idea. So practically, in the 70s, officially started a group called Moro National Liberation Front, and the leader was Miswari, still alive. At that time, he called for jihad, and the call of jihad created a lot of animosity and interest in this part of the world. So the revolution started, and of course it was a combination, because at the time President Marcos took this opportunity to create a martial law and all the other things. Now, after almost 10 years, started another group that is called Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Actually, it's a split from MNLF. The Hashim Salamat, who was with MNLF, split with the idea that it's more Islamic, but in reality, the leadership of the Islamic Liberation Front, it's another group, because in reality there is a strong opposition inside the groups, inside there are groups.
So each one, over these 40 years and even before, have becoming somehow more pure, more Islamic. It was more fundamentalist, moving until now, today, where you have other groups now, Abu Saayef and the BIFF, you have to explain the name, but there are sort of splinter groups that have developed, all concentrated in this region around the island of Mindanao.
Yes, in reality, from that time, MNLF and MILF, we can say that along these years, many young leaders have been invited to study abroad. So the beginning of Abu Saayef officially started the beginning of 90s. It's a movement, John Jelani was the leader, of young people who studied abroad and came with some kind of ideology in Zamboanga. In fact, one of the victim was one of my friends who was killed in 92, and after many other things. The reality of this group is quite unusual. People outside think it's only Islamic. In between there are interests of politicians, etc. But the image is that one. And along the way, Jamaah Islamiyah came from Indonesia, Malaysia, and after Al-Qaeda movement came in the history, Bin Laden have been here with other leaders like Khalifa, these big names that part of the history, and in more recent time, the ISIS entered in the Philippines.
In fact, Abu Saayef allied itself in 2014 with ISIS. Now the question is, of course, there has always been a concern about autonomy and this desire from autonomy, as we know, as you've expressed, from very deep historical times. But today, it's autonomy mixed with a purification of Islam. And so my question to you is, what is the objective of these fundamentalist groups today?
I can say the fundamentalist group today find a good ground here because they get the uneasiness, the animosity of the history they call historical injustices of the past to create or to put in the mind of young people, this is the solution. Maybe in the more recent here they say, you look, the MNLF didn't succeed. The MILF practically no, we are the solution. So young people in some way are attracted, plus there is a lot of money given to these young people. I know stories also, some families we invite to go because there is money given to the family.
To go to other countries, to Muslim countries, to study
to go
abroad.
Also, but also to go to fighting here because there is a good salary for those who join the
jihad.
Yes, practically here in the Philippines, in more recent time, the Mauti group appear and to ISIS. So this is one thing that we can.
Can you identify
forget.
where this money is coming from?
Yes, of course. So we know that the money comes from Muslim countries for sure. We know that the so-called ISIS before they have control in some part of Syria or Iraq and said that they have a lot of money. Plus they have supporters around the world. We cannot say that there is no money coming from the Philippines because if there are political opponent to a certain politicians, they give money to these groups to make more problem in Mindanao.
So there's a mix, a terrible mix of the local politics with the religion. The challenge is in renewed violence in Marawi recently and this tension of climate which doesn't seem to be being resolved, and the president or the present president's approach, which is a military one, a military solution without any negotiation. Is this the right approach? It seems that the government's approach, as I mentioned, no negotiation, we just have a military solution. Is that going to solve this problem?
The situation in Marawi, it was a surprise for us. First of all, one question is why they attack Marawi, that is the so-called Islamic city. Of course, some say they want to give an example of this beginning. For them, the dream was to start a caliphate in Marawi and from here to Asia. In reality, the leaders have been killed and others have been killed. But the solution is too early to say what happened because in between there are many things that are not really on the media, but we know how this fighting has been longer because of some implication of other people who help in this fighting for some political reason that, of course, a strong leader or a president who project a strong presentation have also enemies, and we imagine that enemies have created also problem, and the Marawi situation became longer.
But it doesn't make your work any easier.
No, actually, it was a frustration for us. I was there during this war in Ligan, the nearest place, and I gathered our group, and I was quite surprised when I met the group. One Maranao, the people in Marawi are Maranao, they are quite proud among all the groups, say, maybe this is a lesson for us to be more humble. And I heard also another respected imam say Marawi have been really making things that are un-Islamic. They means all the corruption, this and that, so God punished them. With all these stories, of course, so now the leaders in the Philippines, especially in Mindanao, they are worried of the spread of this ISIS, and there are fatwa against our leader, the Mufti, about terrorism, they condemn terrorism. So even they are doing a lot to control, but of course, it's a big work.
I was going to ask you, what is the response of the moderate Muslim to this issue? On one side, the challenge facing the Muslims is that when a radical group comes in, they say, unless you follow us, you're not a good Muslim because you are not truly following the teaching of the Quran. What is the challenge facing a Muslim who wants to live in peace with his Christian brothers and sisters and doesn't wish to follow this fundamentalist approach to Islam? How does he come out of this problem?
Yes, it's a really big problem. I was a few days ago in Basilan, another very difficult place. I met a group of women that we form in Silsila, we call Muslim Women for Dialogue and Peace, and talking about the Christians are persecuted in some area like Basilan. We already mentioned, you see what we heard, you see this situation. Just a few days ago, 6 Christians have been kidnapped in Olo, and many stories we can say. Really, Christians are under pressure. Of course, sometimes we don't make a big news to avoid problem, but the situation is serious in that sense. Talking with the Muslim, they say probably we can say the so-called Muslim Islam, no? They are under attack also, because in reality these people, the ideology of I say, you are not good Muslim, so we are the real Muslims, so they are also persecuted. So it's a situation very strange, and all, even the moderate, are preoccupied.
What is the testimony, the witness of the Christian? The Christian who says, we have been attacked, but we forgive. We have been attacked, but we forgive. How powerful, how important is that testimony to the Muslim, also in their progression of their, how do you say, almost in their own development, their own faith development, to see this witness of the Christian before them who says, I forgive you?
Really, this is a good witness in presence. The Muslim, they respect the Christian that in spite of this, they continue to do their best, no? Of course, most of them do not verbalize, and they are also afraid to say publicly because they have to maintain the stand of the so-called leader who act in a certain way, justify. Unfortunately, in Islam, I still wait the time when the Muslims say openly we are doing some mistake, no? In some of my article, I said one time, the church asked forgiveness for the past. Why you do not ask the same? And a few weeks ago, I wrote an open letter to the Muslim. It's also in the website. The open letter to the Muslim religious leader, of Mindanao, say to them, you have to be more courageous, you have to do more, because this is your obligation. And in that line, we are sharing. Of course, I cannot pinpoint names and situations, but in general, they accept this program. And that letter was highly appreciated also by many Muslims.
Father, the question now is, what can we do? You have been working now for 34 years, giving your life to this work of peace and reconciliation. How can we help you?
Many ways to help. Of course, the first thing is the prayer, and that sense of solidarity, and also to say to the world that outside, not to complicate the situation with some news that instead of helping will complicate. And of course, my desire is that hopefully our Christian faith will be more strong in our setup. The so-called materialism or secularism has to be rethink. We have to be closer to God also in our society. So prayer and a good example as a Christian or as a Muslim, etc. These are good things to do.
Father Sebastino D'Ambra, thank you for having been with us today in our program.
Thank you to you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today in our program, Where God Weeps. And if you'd like to know more about the work of Father Sebastino on the island of Mindanao, or perhaps how you might be able to help, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.